Hi, everyone. This is Sebastian Traeger. I'm the Managing Director of Reliability.com, and welcome back to another episode of Reliability 4.0. As always, we're on a mission to make the world a more reliable place. And today, we are very excited to be joined by Greg Evans and Brandy Heath with CMC. They're a customer of ours with EasyRCA, and we are just very excited to talk to them about how their reliability efforts in general and specifically their root cause analysis is going. So, Greg and Brandy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Great. Well, just to kind of start off a little bit, I know what CMC is all about. It's the largest manufacturer of steel rebar. But Brandy, why don't you just kind of give folks a quick, what is CMC, and even how did you end up joining the company?
Thanks, Sebastian. We are a global steel manufacturer, vertically integrated from recycling raw materials to steel fabrication. In addition to rebar, we specialize in structural steel and other construction-related materials and services to support infrastructure and construction projects worldwide. And as our organization continues to grow, we're committed to evolving our business to meet emerging needs and opportunities. And as part of that, Greg and I are proud to be a part of the operational excellence team, driving alignment, consistency, and continuous improvement across CMC.
Just kind of continuing on that, how did you end up, kind of your origin story, both into reliability engineering and then specifically at CMC?
So I have an industrial engineering degree, and coming out of college, I went to work for another company and then quickly realized that wasn't the field I wanted to be in. So I joined a process improvement team here at CMC, and that evolved into a maintenance and reliability role where I got my reliability engineering certification and was part of the maintenance team for 8 years before taking my current role as continuous improvement manager.
And what about you, Greg? How did you end up joining the company and, specifically your role there?
So I started my industrial career with Castrol Industrial. I spent 7.5 years in the Southeast traveling industrial manufacturing plants, and CMC was one of my customers, and they were developing the reliability excellence team, and I was going through a personal situation that required me to be home and not travel. CMC was one of my customers, so it was a really good fit. So came into reliability engineering at the mill here back in 2006 and was a part of it from day one of the kickoff. So been with CMC ever since, 18 years on this site before transitioning into the role of OpEx manager.
That's great. I'm sure the company loves having so much experience and wisdom with you all having been there for so long. I want to dive into kind of the meat of our discussion today, but just before we do, a little bit of, what do you each like to do outside of work? I love hearing about what people do inside of work, but it's also nice just to have folks know a little bit more about, the person as well.
I have a 4-year-old grandson. His name's Harvey, so I spend a lot of time with Harvey. One of my hobbies is I race RC cars. I like to race different forms of RC cars, get a lot of time to work on them and then get the joy of going out and putting them on the track and seeing how they perform.
I'm not an RC car racer. Are these like remote control cars?
Yep, 10th scale or 16th scale remote control cars, either oval or off-road buggy style cars that we race on indoor carpet.
Cool. Okay, that sounds pretty amazing. You've obviously got to be skilled enough as a driver to see the thing all the way around the oval.
Yeah, and oval racing sounds easy, but it's not. It's all about setup on the car and being very methodical and setting up a very small car like you would a large race car.
How many trophies do you have?
I've got some big ones. I've done some national events. I've finished on the top podium, like top 7 or 8. It's pretty neat. I've probably got a dozen or more actual trophies that I cherish. So it's no prize money, anything like that. It's just, you get a trophy, you get a picture.
I was going to say, it's still fun to win, even if it's just for fun, right?
I'm as competitive for a little placard on a win night as I would be for $1,000 on a win night.
That's great. And what about you, Brandy?
So, like Greg, I actually have 2 grandbabies, so those have become my favorite thing to do in the last 2 years. Definitely love hanging out and spending time with them. And then I also love to work with flowers, so I do flowers for events, and that's kind of my passion. Maybe one day my retirement job.
I love asking this question because the variety of answers I get are amazing, right? I would never think RC race car and flowers is what I was going to get. That's really neat. I love that people have these passions and hobbies that they get to pour themselves into. Well, let's dive in now. What I wanted to talk a little bit about is you all obviously work with us at EasyRCA and why it is that you're using it and how it's going. And I don't know which one of you is best to take this, but what challenges or problems were you facing organizationally before you adopted EasyRCA?
We both had this as something that came up when we interviewed for our OpEx roles. Brandy is continuous improvement and myself as maintenance reliability. We had this listed out as a solution that we needed for a problem that we identified before we ever came into the role. So we quickly realized that we needed to work together on it because it was on both of our very first presentations that we did as a group. I think part of the challenge is we have some large manufacturing sites that are spread out across the United States, from Arizona to New Jersey down to Florida, and everybody was doing what they did differently. We had some historically CMC sites that may have done it in a similar fashion, and then some other sites that we had purchased from a competitor that either were not using a system or had a previous system that they really liked that they no longer had access to, with being removed as one of the sites for that competitor. So we quickly realized we needed a tool that could manage our RCAs and something that we could use across the board just to try and streamline our processes.
Now, why is that so important? What was the big deal about everyone doing it their own way? I mean, presumably they liked the way they were doing it. It was kind of working for them. What was the problem with that?
Well, in some instances, it wasn't working for them. We had access databases that we used. We were unable to track action items. If we had them where we could track that they were complete or not, we didn't have a good way of following up on that. So that there was just a lot of randomness in what we were doing. And from an OpEx level, we're trying to kind of set a new standard and have some oversight and some ability, maybe not oversight, but some ability to see from a higher level where we're struggling, where we're having problems, and see where we're having those same problems in other locations. And we didn't have that ability with the methods that we were doing. We were using Excel, we were using PowerPoint, we were using Word, we were using Microsoft Planner, just all kinds of different tools to try and do one function.
Then Brandy, go ahead and add to that if you'd like. And so a follow-up question, and again, for either of you all, because I know you're in more of an influencing relationship than a direct, I shouldn't assume that, but I think you are. Did you all engage some of the kind of stakeholders or other plants in thinking through, do you feel like you have problems in this area? Is this something we can help you solve?
We talked with several of our other sites and really tried to go about it from a very uniformed approach on what we thought our shortcomings were or what our current state was before we really outlined what our desired functionality would be for like a shared platform. And then really just working with you guys. And as we narrowed down our choices, we did a trial and we really worked to involve some of our end users in that trial so that we could get a good feeling for, was this the right choice for our company as an organization?
We had them trial actual cases, and we did it in a couple different versions of the software. And then we took their opinions. The folks that were out in the field that were using the tools, we got their feedback on their preferences and then put that back out in front of a larger group, kind of get a decision on where we wanted to head.
Yeah, I really appreciated that process, how thoughtful you all were in evaluating multiple solutions and making sure various people were involved in that. And presumably that's a big part of why adoption's gone well, which we'll get to in a minute. On the evaluation though, were there particular criteria that you thought EasyRCA is better because of X, Y, or Z versus other solutions that we looked at?
So I think one of the things I had noticed is the visual learning, just having the ability for the sticky notes on the screen, the various colors of the different hypotheses, the ability for you to see that visual, I think was important. We got a lot of feedback from our teams how easy the software was to use, I guess pun intended, without having to go through a lot of training to be able to kind of peck and poke their way through the software and make it useful. It was, the visuals. We had some requirements that we desired with some of the ability to track our action items and to be able to have pictures and different things in the software, have some mobile functionality, be able to produce a report, and all those things were considered as we looked through the tools. And at the end of the day, our folks who were using the software were the decision makers. It was a tool that they chose as the best option for us. It wasn't Brandy and I choosing it for us, which I think is important.
I think that process is just really helpful to recognize. And that's even how we design software. I mean, we recognize that at the end of the day, we've got to make things so that the folks who are going to use it want to use it, because it doesn't matter how much we build a tool that managers like to look at results or stats. If people don't want to use it, then it's not going to be a tool that's used, right? Like even if it's forced on people, they're going to do only the absolute minimum that they have to do. In terms of implementation, how did you all implement it? Did you all implement it plant by plant? Did you bring everybody on at once? Can you describe maybe that implementation process?
So we started with a small group and we had a couple of people from each site, 2 users per site, and we met out in Alabama at our location in Alabama last year in October. And we did the in-person training with the reliability group, trying to set a new standard kind of as our minimum base So we did that in-person training, and we trained those individuals to be kind of the go-tos at each of the locations. And then what we ask of that group is to give us your list of users at the location, and let's start onboarding folks from each of those locations. And then they could go to those people that had been trained when there were questions that they had that maybe they didn't have an answer to. That would be a good first pass.
Did that work for you all? I mean, looking back, are you thinking maybe others might listen to this who might want to implement really this software, any software? Did you find the way of saying, let's take the kind of power users from these different plants, pull them together, train them up, and then make them ambassadors as well as users? Did that seem to work well?
I think in most instances it did. The only issue is maybe when we didn't get that super user, when we just got somebody who wasn't necessarily going to really use the software. We did have an instance or two of that where folks went a long time without using the software after that initial class and then had a lot of questions and follow-up. So I think if I was telling somebody else who was going to do an implementation, if I was going to give a recommendation, I would make sure it was really that it was going to be those power users, super users, that it wasn't just somebody to be in the room, that it was actually somebody who was really going to use the software.
And just to kind of poke on that a little bit. So what happened in that particular case? Was it that they couldn't identify someone to be a super user, or that person was going to be and they turned out not to be?
I think in the instance that I'm thinking of, that was the case. They thought that person was going to be the person to use it based off of the information that we gave them in the beginning. And then as it's really rolled out, we've realized we need some other individuals, or that person had to get some extra training out in Arizona. It ended up working out well. He already had been through the training, just needed a little refresher on the software.
There's a really useful book called Crossing the Chasm. It's written mostly to companies that build software, but I think it works for companies who are implementing software, in which you identify a handful of power users or early adopters. And then once they're really using it, they become examples for others to kind of follow. And that's kind of a good way to implement software and sort of, quote, cross the chasm from just the few to the many that might be using it.
And I think in general, we were successful doing that.
That's good. Obviously, the real world's never as perfect as a graph in a book, but if we can approximate it, I think that's a lot of times a real win. So how is EasyRCA being used now in your organization?
Really, we're using it at all of our mill sites, and we're really focused in on our FAs, our RCAs. I feel like we have people using it to create their fish bones. We're doing 5 Ys. We've got people that are really digging in and doing the full PROACT method for more complex problem solving. So I feel like we're really fully utilizing the tool in a lot of different areas at mill locations. I feel like it's given us like common analysis on like our downtime, our equipment failures. We've got people starting to use it for safety related issues. I would say we're still adapting and evolving as it progresses, and more people see it. We're still gaining interest in the potential for what it can be used for.
We onboarded a couple of IT guys last week. That was something new for us, right? We onboarded 2. So the safety and the IT, those are ones that I wouldn't have expected initially myself that have been good wins.
So you said safety, IT, obviously reliability, and then kind of plant leaders as well. So it sounds like a variety of things.
Operations as well from both sides of our mills.
And what are some of the use cases that you've seen? Like a very standard one you kind of mentioned with safety and IT, but maybe a use case that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, so incident investigations, we use another system here to manage our safety action items that has basically a 5Y in it. You're very limited on your scope, and we've had a number of safety team members that have wanted the software ability so that they can think outside of the 5Y. And I think the PROACT is really nice for doing that, right? To lead you down the path of there's more than just one potential for how that injury happened. So I think that's a typical one in safety, right? Without getting into individual incidents. But things like downtime, I can recall one where they had a system failure on a cooling system in the rolling mill, and just really trying to dig in and identify, what were the issues with the cooling pumps and the lack of having some of the glycol on site, and routine PMs that may or may not have had all the steps involved in those. So just trying to capture, all of the how could the event happen, right? And then eliminate those as potentials. So we initially start those off based off of downtime events. So in general, if it meets a certain threshold, then there's a trigger for either a 5Y or a full-blown analysis.
Well, it's great to hear all those examples. And I know that, giving specifics isn't necessarily possible, but just hearing the variety and diversity, I mean, that's encouraging. I know that'll encourage our team that, folks are able to solve problems across a number of different things. I'm also very encouraged to hear that you all are using kind of all three of the methodologies, from 5 why to Fishbone to kind of the logic tree and PROACT. So that's encouraging to hear as well. When you think about kind of specific features, and what are you all finding most valuable?
So again, I like the visuals. I think it's really nice visual learning if you're hosting an investigation with a team, not sitting there just talking through the event, but being able to pull the visuals up and have the detail on your board. I also really like the ability to put the information into the event, to start from the wizard and to be able to put all your information in and to help you build your report as you're doing your analysis. I think that's extremely helpful. Then I don't have to spend hours on the back end trying to build a report. I've already done it as I'm doing the analysis.
When we built EasyRCA, we talked to a lot of prospective customers and ask them, what do you do? And just kind of walk through the steps. And this is always a good exercise, kind of like just describe the process. What are the steps? Because as somebody who's creating software, you're always thinking, what can software do to automate this or make it easier? And then of course you ask people, what don't you like about doing an RCA? And to a person, they love the problem solving. They like, I love the sticky note, the whiteboard, the opportunity for us to kind of get in the room with people and like think about it. And then to a person, they hated the report, right? We like the problem solving. We don't like kind of that busy work. And so we were like, well, that's definitely something we're going to need to automate, or else, we're not going to make this something people are interested in using. So I'm glad to hear that. What about some of the AI features? Have you all either personally or from the team been able to use some of those?
I have used it a little bit, but then I was in conversation last week, actually talking to a team here from Alabama, and they seem to really be loving that feature because it gives them ideas on, like, sometimes, like, we have one process engineer that's moved into a new area, so they're not super familiar with those processes in that work area. So the AI function, they were saying, really kind of helps give them a clearer idea of all the possibilities for potential causes, and really helped in their in-person meeting that they had to do the RCA. She said it was super easy just putting up the things on the board, and they were able to start, eliminating or talking through some of those in a situation where sometimes people won't really speak up or slow to speak up. She could use that to kind of help get the conversation started.
Good. Greg, what about you? Anything on that front?
Yeah, so I always warn people it's only as good as what you use it for. So to Brandy's point, right, giving you a place to start from, being able to eliminate the causes. I mean, it's using the words that you've put in and stuff before to try and do some of that functionality. So I like it. I think it's very useful. And I think it gives you a place, just kind of helps you to speed up the process potentially, as long as the stuff that's in there is relevant, right? If you're not making sure that the information is current, relevant to the topic you're talking about, then it could lead you down a wrong path. But in general, that's not an issue that we face.
I'm excited to see that evolve, how AI can, our vision for AI is not AI is going to replace humans, nor is our vision, hey, AI is silly, you don't need to use it, just use your own wisdom and expertise. We really feel like it's humans and their wisdom empowered by AI that's kind of the answer. And so we just want to keep building out features that empower people to do just a better job. We also like to get some constructive feedback. So as of right now, what would you say are kind of the most things you'd like to see? Either they don't exist or things you want to see improve in platform.
So I think for me, a couple things that have stuck out to me from others, the functionality, we use the SAP hierarchy structure, and we try and tie that down to the equipment we're having the failure on. And I think just some clearer ability to delineate between the sites for us is important. So being able to search our Arizona mill and find the equipment a little bit easier. So maybe a couple drop downs instead of just the single drop down with the hierarchy would be good. And then the other one is the Power BI that you guys are working on, just having that ingrained as part of the software itself. I think that's in the works, but the ability to use the information that's in the Power BI to help the sites to keep up with their action items with the RCAs that are behind. I think if we can not have it in two different locations, long term, that'll be better for CMC, better for our individual sites.
It's good feedback. Thanks. What about you, Brandy?
Those are really the two that I had listed as well. Can't really think of anything else.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you all giving us the feedback and sort of using the software to the extent that you can. So we appreciate that. As we kind of begin to wrap up, just what advice would you give to other companies who are considering EasyRCA?
I would just say trial it. I would have end users enter test RCAs, and I think then it just speaks for itself. I think that was the most critical and beneficial piece for us and really evaluating the software was trialing it.
It's great feedback. And Greg?
I would say don't skimp out on the training, right? Take that time, put the investment in your people. The training provides a good foundation in not the use of the software, but how to do root cause investigations. And I think sometimes we take for granted that people really know what they're doing in those investigations and really know how to execute those. And I think that training gives you a good foundation to be able to do the root cause and also helps you to use the software. But I would say trial it and
trial and train.
Yep.
Good tease. And on a follow-up on that, so I am curious, the folks who didn't get that training, I know you had a smaller group get the training and then they kind of influenced the others. Have those others been able to, just through the software, do you think get better at doing root cause analysis? Or are you thinking, in a perfect world, we'd still have more training on root cause analysis, not merely on the software? I'm just curious your opinion on whether doing things in the software is actually helping to kind of train people, if you will.
Yeah, I think the more you use it, the better you get at using it. But we've made an investment in our folks, right? That was one of 6 sessions of training that we purchased, and we've done 2 others this year. You know, we've literally filled 3 classrooms with people from across our mills and invested a week's time in them learning how to do better investigations. And we brought them in from sites all over the U.S. to be a part of that. We've got another couple scheduled, or at least in mind right now, for our upcoming fiscal year that starts in September. And we want to continue to evolve, because the more we invest in our teams, the better our investigations will be. The more we use the software, I believe the faster those investigations will be, the more methodical, because we'll just be that much better at using this system to help us to get to the root.
Yeah, it's almost like the formula is really good leadership, which you all are, a good tool, which we hope EasyRCA is, and then training, so people, and not necessarily training on the clicking of the buttons, I don't hear you saying that, but training on what exactly they're trying to accomplish and what the goal of an RCA is and kind of how to do that. And that's kind of the formula, right? Leadership, a tool, and then people who know what they're doing, I think is where you get a lot of that
100%.
result. Good to hear that. Well, is there anything else then, again, as we wrap up, that you want to share about your experiences using EasyRCA?
Well, you were asking earlier about onboarding. You mentioned that we've got over 400 people onboarded in the last year. So, I think, to me, a surprise, something I'm really proud of, is just the amount of willingness for the sites to actually pull in and use it. I didn't necessarily expect that at first. So I think I expect the unexpected, I guess I would say, and be kind of farsighted, try to pull those folks as quickly as you can, get them using the software.
400 users in a year. That's really exciting. It's got to be very encouraging for you all. I know when you roll out a project or a platform, the worst case scenario of like, no one wants to use it, is so frustrating. So it's really encouraging to hear that. And so congratulations to both of you for your hard work and your leadership, and not only identifying the problem, but then having, I think, a really good process to engage all the stakeholders and what the solution would be, so that you're not, foisting something on them, but they're really, it sounded like you guys were really shepherding the process and letting others kind of have a voice to what they're going to do. But then also, I think it sounds like you had a really good strategy around rollout and adoption, and then, been surprised by some things, right? Some other departments getting involved in using it. So that's just a really amazing journey that you've been on. Are there, what's the next step of the journey in your mind? Is it thousands of users? Are you trying to go broader? Are you trying to go deeper, like more problems? How do you kind of think about that?
I definitely think we see an increase in our number of users as we move out to other lines of business. I think we're just kind of scratching the surface a bit on the opportunity that we have out there to really implement EasyRCA. And I think overall, it's just going to be a great tool for us as a company as we continue to move forward. And I think that you guys have been a great team to work with. I think overall, the Reliability Group has been super supportive and committed to really helping us get things set up in a way that really aligns with what we're trying to do with our business strategy. Really excited about where we're going.
Thank you. It's great. Greg, anything you want to add there?
We are trying to do some automation, some ability to automate the beginning of a root cause investigation based off of data out of our MES systems. We're working on that functionality now. That was year 2 for us, as kind of when we wanted to implement. We wanted to just get the software out and get folks using it, but the intention of being able to add that automatic functionality to at least create the triggers for the investigation. So we're working with some of our maintenance and reliability and operations teams,
Great.
trying to identify what those triggers will be for the sites and then get those built and established.
Well, we'll have to do a 2.0 of this interview in a year or two once the automation's in place and more teams are using it. But thank you all so much for your time. Again, we've had Greg Evans and Brandy Heath from CMC. They are a customer of EasyRCA, and we just really appreciate it. Presumably, if folks want to get in touch with you, best way to do that is
CMC.com.
We appreciate the time. Thank you for that. And to all of our listeners, again, we're really about helping engineers and really anyone who wants to take more steps towards solving problems and using technology to do that. If you're looking for RCA training or resources, materials, certainly software, check out EasyRCA.com. We would love to help you. We'd love to help your company, whether it's begin a trial that you want to check out our software and see if it's for you. We'd be happy to help you on that. Again, thank you for all of those who are here today, as together we make the world a more reliable place. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much.
Thank you.